Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that your salary doubled overnight. Amazing, you're rich. You immediately begin shopping for things you absolutely do not need. Perhaps a giant television, perhaps a boat, perhaps a second boat in case the first boat gets lonely. Life is good. Then you go to buy groceries. The milk costs twice as much. Bread costs twice as much. Gas costs twice as much. Rent costs twice as much. Suddenly, your doubled salary. Doesn't feel nearly as exciting. Congratulations, you've just met inflation, the economic force that somehow manages to be incredibly important and incredibly misunderstood at the same time. People talk about inflation constantly. Politicians blame it, economists debate it, news anchors panic about it. Everyone has an opinion. Yet most people understand inflation the same way they understand WI-fee. They know it's important, they know it's everywhere, and they become angry when it stops working. Let's start with the basics. Inflation simply means prices rise over time. That's it. That's the entire concept. Thank you for watching. Unfortunately, if economics were that simple, economists would have significantly fewer opportunities to argue with each other. So let's keep going. Imagine a stick figure carrying a dollar bill. In 1980, that dollar bought certain things. Today, not so much. The dollar still exists. It didn't physically shrink. Nobody stole pieces of it. But its purchasing power declined. In other words, the dollar became weaker. It's like sending your money to the gym and discovering it skipped every workout. Now here's where things get weird. Most people think all inflation is bad. Economists hear that statement and immediately begin preparing a PowerPoint presentation because a small amount of inflation is actually considered normal. Central banks generally aim for modest inflation, rather than zero inflation, which sounds insane at first. Imagine telling someone, our goal is to make everything slightly more expensive every year. Not exactly a winning campaign slogan, but there are reasons. When inflation is low and stable, businesses can plan, consumers spend, the economy moves. Problems usually appear when inflation becomes too high or too unpredictable. That's when the inflation monster starts. Breaking furniture. Now let's discuss one of the biggest misconceptions. People often think inflation means companies randomly woke up one morning and decided, you know what would be fun? Charging more. While companies certainly enjoy making money, inflation is usually more complicated. Prices can rise for many reasons. Sometimes demand increases, sometimes supply decreases, sometimes production costs rise, sometimes energy costs surge, sometimes global events disrupt everything, and occasionally the economy decides to remind everyone that it has a sense of humor. Imagine a town with 10 apples. 10 people want apples. Everything is fine. Now imagine there are still 10 apples, but 20 people suddenly want them. The price goes up. Not because apples became better, not because the apples hired a marketing team, because more people are competing for the same thing. Economists call this demand. Normal people call it, why is everything suddenly expensive? Then there's the opposite problem. Supply. Imagine everybody wants apples, but now there are only 5 apples. Maybe a drought happened, maybe transportation got disrupted, maybe somebody accidentally blocked a shipping route with a boat again. The result? Higher prices. The same number of buyers, fewer goods, the inflation monster grows stronger. But here's where inflation gets truly sneaky. Not everything inflates equally. Some prices explode, others barely move, some even fall. Technology is a great example. Today's smartphone can perform tasks that would have seemed magical 20 years ago. Meanwhile, the cost of housing in certain cities appears to have been calculated by a... This creates confusion. One person says inflation isn't that bad, another says it's terrible. Both might be looking at completely different expenses because inflation is personal. A retired person, a college student, a homeowner, a renter, a parent, a recent graduate, they're all experiencing slightly different versions of the economy now. Let's talk about wages because this is where many people get frustrated. Imagine prices rise by 5%. Your salary rises by 2%. You are moving backward, even though you're earning more money. That's the trick. Inflation isn't really about prices. It's about the relationship between prices and income. If your paycheck rises faster than inflation, you're generally gaining ground. If inflation rises faster than your paycheck, you're generally losing ground. This is why people can receive raises and still feel poorer. The raise exists, the purchasing power doesn't. It's like running on a treadmill. You're moving, just not getting anywhere. Then there's one of inflation's favorite victims, savings. Imagine hiding cash under your mattress for 30 years. First of all, strange choice. Second, inflation quietly reduces what that money can buy. Every year, little by little, like a financial termite. You don't notice it immediately. That's what makes it dangerous. A thief stealing half your money would be obvious. Inflation works differently. It steals tiny pieces over long periods, polite theft, economically approved theft, the kind that happens slowly enough to become normal. This is why investors become obsessed with returns. They're not just trying to make money. They're trying to outrun inflation. Imagine inflation is a treadmill moving backwards. Standing still isn't actually standing still. You have to keep moving just to maintain position. That's a surprisingly accurate description of personal finance. Now, let's address one of the strangest things about inflation. Everybody notices it. Nobody notices it. At the same time, people remember when gas was cheaper. People remember when houses were cheaper. People remember when movie tickets were cheaper. People remember when fast food was cheaper. At this point, older generations can turn any conversation into a historical documentary. I remember when coffee cost 50 cents. Wonderful. Please tell us more about the ancient times. The challenge is that humans are very good at remembering old prices. They're much worse at remembering old salaries. People remember a $50,000 house. They forget the average incomes that existed alongside it. Memory can be selective, especially when discussing economics. Then comes the political part, which we will approach carefully. Like a person handling fireworks, inflation is one of the most politically sensitive topics in existence. Why? Because everyone experiences it. Everyone buys food. Everyone buys fuel. Everyone pays bills. Inflation affects daily life in ways stock markets and GDP statistics often don't. This makes it emotionally powerful. And whenever something is emotionally powerful, political arguments are guaranteed. Some people blame government, spending, some blame corporations, some blame central banks, some blame global events, some blame all of the above. The truth is usually complicated enough to disappoint everyone equally, which is often how you know you're approaching reality. Now, here's the biggest thing people misunderstand. Inflation isn't a monster that suddenly appears. It's more like weather, a result of countless forces interacting at the same time. Supply, demand, energy, policy, trade, consumer behavior, business decisions, global events, interest rates. Everything influences everything. Economists spend entire careers studying inflation, and even they occasionally look confused, which should make the rest of us feel slightly better. So what is the inflation monster nobody understands? It's not just rising prices, it's the gradual decline of purchasing power, the invisible force that changes what your money can do. The reason your grandparents sound shocked every time they visit a grocery store. The reason investors obsess over returns. The reason raises sometimes don't feel like raises. And the reason personal finance is never just about how much money you make. It's about what that money can actually buy. Because at the end of the day, inflation doesn't care how many dollars you have. It only cares what those dollars are worth. And that's a much more important distinction. Even if it's considerably less fun than buying a second boat.